All right, everyone. If you can see me and hear me, please let me know in the chat. That way we can get everything started. Welcome to the show. This is another Monday night where we're going over some interesting topics that show us why we should have a mindset of just thinking about it as a future event. With everything happening in the world right now, you should be focused on threat assessment and you should be aware of your surroundings in a way that might be different than how you're used to. And so hopefully I can demonstrate that for you tonight so that we can get people better prepared and more likely to survive any of these strange events that might occur here in the near future, because a lot of weird stuff is happening and we have a lot to go through tonight regarding that to kind of show you why this is such an important thing to do. Christio Nemo, 5 by something, not sure what yet. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for letting me know. We've got some 5 by 5s coming through. 308 by 308, Indiana says Jet. So, looks like we are good to go. John has a long mustache, says no thanks, which I concur. Now, I do want to say that all of you are the main reason I do this, and I really appreciate your support. So thank you so much for being here. If you're here on the replay, you're part of replay crew, you're awesome too, and I appreciate you chiming in. I know that it's late for some of y'all, especially here on the East Coast, so thanks for checking back in and getting the information. And I do also need to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel, so thanks to them I can get out here and do more when it comes to sharing this information and trying to get more people ready for what is likely to come. Some people are saying the volume is a little bit low. Mike H, thanks for letting me know that. I'll get the mic a little bit closer and hopefully we can make an improvement there, okay? So first and foremost, we know that the powers that be have started quite an instigation in other parts of the world, but that doesn't mean we get left alone over here just because we're protected by oceans. And here's some information for you that I think is very relevant to kind of shape the discussion for tonight and to show you what it is you should be looking at when it comes to potential threats. Now, I also want everyone to keep in mind, you have to have a new mindset. You can't continue on with this mindset of, so when SHTF happens, or when this world war occurs, or whatever else it is, because then you're doing yourself a disservice by not already operating under that assumption, and by living your life in a way that kind of treats things as if we're kind of living through an emergency scenario. You'll look at things differently and create a better strategic response to anything that might occur. And when I say that, for example, I recently had a strange situation occur at my local grocery store, and I didn't do my job when it came to actively, I guess, let's just say, storing away that possible threat profile in order to access it in the future if it ever became something more legitimate. So I'm going to focus more on some of these different situations that could occur, and I'm going to change my situational awareness to be a little bit more, I guess you would say, curtailed towards living in a almost like wartime environment, because that's very much where we are at this point in time. Make H, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate all the support I get here, and you all are amazing. So first and foremost, this is from Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. Iran has tried to kill American officials on U.S. soil, FBI says. This should tell you a lot, but this is what we already understand. But there's some interesting tidbits here that I want to go over that give you some more ideas as to how some of this could be happening and why things aren't just so obvious, right? Don't expect to see somebody in traditional garb that you would see over in the Middle East start perpetrating things here in the United States, because that's not how things are done. This is a different style of warfare, and you should be aware that deception is the name of the game. And if you're not operating under the idea that deception is being used against you, then you might not see the lie when it's presented right in front of your face, right? FBI Director Christopher Wray told U.S. lawmakers on Wednesday that the Islamic Republic has tried to kill American officials even within the United States. Testifying in front of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, Wray said the regime in Iran has mounted assassination attempts against dissidents and high-ranking current and former U.S. government officials, either directly or by hiring criminals and including on American soil. Now, the biggest takeaway from that specific sentence is that they're willing to hire criminals to act on these assassination attempts, or who knows what else they would be willing to hire criminals for. And so criminals might not fit the profile, might not fit the usual suspects when it comes to the level of attacks that we're discussing here tonight. But you should understand that that's being leveraged against you, which means anyone who might engage in criminal activity could be targeted to act upon some of these directives from Iran. And you should definitely be considering that because something you might see as a crime, especially maybe shared on social media or something that's being put out by the news to say, hey, this thing happened today and this criminal behavior, X, Y, and Z, that might not just be your standard typical street criminal. That might be somebody who is employed by a foreign entity in order to enact more fifth generation warfare upon you, right? So I thought that was very intriguing for them to actually admit the part of hiring criminals because that shows you that this threat isn't so obvious and is exceedingly within our population because guns for hire exist and they're certainly willing to do a lot of atrocious things. So, since October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel, Iran and its proxies have become subjects of unprecedented scrutiny in Washington. Wray has called to testify in the Senate, was called to testify in the Senate, in the light of attacks on American forces in the Middle East, which seems to be on the rise despite repeated warnings to Iran aligned forces from the Biden administration. I'm sure they're shaking in their boots because we have so much strong leadership right now, right? Anyway, in the last 2 weeks, U.S. troops in Syria and Iraq have been attacked 27 times. The Pentagon has said that it holds the Islamic Republic responsible for all attacks. And this is from U.S. Civil Defense News right here that says the War Department states that Iran is responsible for all attacks on U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. So it's a matter of time before we find ourselves in a conflict with Iran. I mean, I think we all know where this is going, but that doesn't mean they're not going to retaliate here on American soil. So there's a lot more information here regarding the attacks in Syria and Iraq on U.S. service personnel, but we can move forward from here to discuss the actual threats here on the homeland, because of course, the U.S. service personnel that we care deeply about are in harm's way, but they are in those, forward operating bases out in Syria and Iraq, which are much further removed from our daily lives. But what could happen here on U.S. soil that you should be prepared for, or at least considering when it comes to your preparedness strategy? And this is what we need to really focus on because it's the most likely threat that we face while these conflicts escalate throughout the world, okay? All right, so, and I am seeing, let's see, Justin X Zoo says, Magic Prepper, I appreciate for what you have been doing. I appreciate you as well. Florida Sheepdog says, if the government wants my money, they'll have to take it back from Ukraine. Okay, so, and you know what? There's a lot of money being sent all over the place right now, and it's not always where you want it to go, now is it? And then we also have Zen Zonghu says, hello, Magic Prepper. Well, hello to you as well. We also have Carrot Top here. Oki Khan is here. The Watchman is here. Let's see, we have a lot of the old crew who's been here for a very long time, Desert 1776. So thank you all so much for being here. Now, let's move on to how this could be happening. And I want this to kind of like paint the picture or at least present what it is we might be witnessing in a way that you might not have thought about yet. This is actually from October 31st, but this is actually a report put out for Australia. Now, this is interesting because we're not getting reports like this here in the United States in the same vein. But Australia, of course, is part of the Western society, you might say, which means that they're just as much at risk when it comes to open conflict with countries like China as anybody else. So this is very interesting to me, though, because I want you to think about everything you see from here on out from this perspective. Disgruntled employees being targeted by foreign spies on dark web as insider threats become major national security focus. Just because this is being reported on in Australia does not mean that it's limited to Australia. Spies in suits have become one of the biggest national security threats Australia faces, according to Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill. The federal government has released its first review into the dangers faced by Australia's critical infrastructure, such as the nation's hospitals, its energy and telecommunications organizations, and its food delivery networks. I want you to keep this in mind as we go through our discussion tonight. Australia's National Intelligence Agency says espionage has supplanted terrorism and its principal national security concern, and that even a small level of activity could have severe consequences that may take years to be resolved. The review found dark web job advertisements listed by foreign intelligence services are targeting disgruntled employees as a recruitment tool, seeking to take advantage of either a desire for money or revenge. That risk is also exacerbated in periods of heightened international tension. It also found the growing trend of working from home had led to more connection between work and personal devices, making insider threats more difficult to detect. And the review warned the fast paced nature of many critical infrastructure sectors exposed them to greater risk. Critical infrastructure sectors often operate at a high tempo with increased turnover or significant staff shortages. Such trends may create vulnerabilities through a lack of workplace loyalty or staff accessing sensitive information without appropriate security clearances. Background checks or information handling knowledge, the review found. Mrs. O'Neill noted that, or Miss O'Neill, sorry, I didn't want to, assume. Miss O'Neill noted that the review's finding that insiders were now one of the most attractive targets for malicious foreign actors. Okay. What these spies are trying to do is influence the companies, influence the Australian government, or degrade and hurt those systems that are very important to us. This is not limited to Australia. But when you think about some of the things we're going to discuss next, in this vein of disgruntled employees or anyone who's disgruntled about anything being targeted by foreign spies via the dark web and being offered jobs, basically, because this is saying that dark web job advertisements are being listed, which would assume that there's compensation being offered for these activities of some kind. Who knows, right? But they're trying to recruit, and they're either using someone's desire for money or revenge as the leverage to utilize them for their deeds. And I think that once we start talking about these threats here on U.S. soil that we have many examples of to discuss tonight, you might be able to understand why some of these things might be happening better by seeing how other countries are actually being affected by it as well, and where some of this motivation might be coming from, whether or not it be financial or desire for revenge, right? And especially with the way things are happening right now with the division in the country, and especially when you want to discuss, people targeting others for their religion or their race or whatever else it might be, you can understand where this desire for revenge or anything else related to it might be strong enough to make somebody act, especially if they're influenced by someone via the dark web. And if there's money involved as well, maybe that's enough to push them over the edge. So it's definitely getting interesting out there. Law of the minimum. MP, you have $1,000. What AR-15 platform would you get for $1,000? That's a tough one. But all I can say is that in that range, there's a lot of good companies out there. Maybe like an FN-15 would be a good option. That's just one I'm going to throw out there. The SIG M400 series is pretty decent as well. Okay, so let's go ahead. And Rip Curl Readiness says, yeah, the FN AR-15 is a great choice. Okay, so I guess I did okay there, All right, now, and if you want to hear what I've been suggested by people who do that kind of stuff for a living, BCM, Bravo Company Manufacturing, is the way to go. That's just what I've been told. You do you. Okay, let's talk about the actual threats here on U.S. soil. Were they influenced by the dark web, by money, by revenge? I'm not sure. I can't tell you that for certain, but I can tell you that when you start to look at things through the vein of SHTF, of global conflict, of foreign entities wanting to enact attacks on U.S. soil, and now we have the FBI saying that, yes, Iran has targeted U.S. officials on U.S. soil and have tried to hire criminals in order to do some of these attacks. Now we can look through this information from that lens and say, there might be more to this than what meets the eye, which I pretty much guarantee you there is. Okay, first and foremost, November 1st, or posted October 31st, right? I usually try to keep our conversations within the previous week, but a lot of things have happened over the last 10 days or so, so I wanted to kind of bring some of that into the equation to kind of paint this broader picture. So, we're close to a week, but not quite exactly a week, right? Doing the best I can here. But yes, October 31st, okay? Which was, 6 days ago. Right? I don't know how math works. Docs. Okay. Man threatened to bomb Indiana school buses, intimidated local police. Okay. Now, as we go through this, I'm just going to have to use some certain language to avoid a couple small details just because of the way this platform operates. But I'm going to do my best to give you the story exactly how it is, and you'll understand exactly what I mean when I start to discuss some of this, okay? A Tucson, Arizona man has been arrested for threatening to place pipe bombs on school buses in Indiana. I would say that that's a pretty serious threat, and I would be very concerned if I had children on a school bus in that area. So yeah, this is a big problem. According to a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona, 28-year-old Amir Safavi Farakvi, I believe I said that correctly, was arrested by the FBI's Southern Arizona Violent Crime and Gang Task Force because he allegedly used his telephone in Tucson to threaten to place pipe bombs on school buses in the Castleton area of Indianapolis. So this person was threatening a major metropolitan area and threatening children, which is a problem for me and for you and for everyone else. Court filings indicate Faroki called IMPD and threatened to bomb school buses on October 24th. Officials, and by the way, let me know in the chat. I'm going to do a quick thing here real quick because I just need to kind of know where we're all at regarding regarding whether or not we're getting all the information from any media sources or not. I just put a poll in the chat that says, did you hear about this story? Were you aware that this even happened? Okay, because I wasn't necessarily aware of it immediately, and it's egregious in many ways, especially if there was any actual confidence that this could be pulled off. So back to the story. Officials reported that Faroki called the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department and told its phone operators to send officers to a specific location in Castleton because he placed pipe bombs on school buses and would shoot any responding officers. Faroki also attempted to intimidate members of the Bloomington Police Department staff on October 21st. Court documents state that Faroki called BPD several times. During one of the calls, he told an employee he was watching them through a window. He also told the employee he was going to assault them in the worst way possible. Okay, you understand what I mean by that, until they were terminated. Court documents indicate Faroki informed the employee he was going to assault them in the worst way possible, their children. He reportedly told the employee he would wait outside for them until their shift ended. Faroki's phone threats weren't limited to police departments in Indiana. He also threatened multiple hospitals in Tucson, according to recent legal filings. Faroki allegedly called Tucson ER Hospital and threatened the staff there. Faroki said he would shoot hospital staff and patients if he didn't get the medication he wanted. Faroki also called Northwest Hospital in Tucson and allegedly threatened to shoot hospital staff and patients. The hospital went into lockdown for 2 hours after Faroki called it, according to court documents. I'm sorry, but a hospital being locked down for 2 hours on its own is extremely problematic because that could lead to somebody's inadvertent demise, right? So this is a problem no matter whether or not this person was actually going to be able to execute any of these threats. The threats were made. So this all happened. According to the chat, 91% of you so far had no idea that this happened, okay? I understand that. So 9% of you did, and that's great. And I think that it's very good for us to be really analyzing some of these reports that are occurring, right? Likely, in my opinion, the reason this wasn't more front page is because of the fact that the attacks themselves didn't occur. But that doesn't mean they weren't going to had this person not been apprehended. Well, here's the thing. There's one thing here, and this is not me trying to say anything negative about anyone particular, which I'm going to drink my coffee now before we do this. Now, my little Mr. Buddy heater just told me it's out of propane. Unfortunate. Either way, it's a little cold in here. Did I mention that? So, listen, I am not trying to lump everybody together as being problematic based on purely origin or things of that nature. But one glaring thing from this story that was quite missing was this person's origin, which doesn't matter generally until you start to showcase it in the sense of these things are happening now while there are calls being made from the mothership in many ways to incite this chaos and this violence within our country. So we have to contextualize it and find out if there could be any possible connection, right? And listen, I have great friends who are Iranian in descent. It is what it is. We're Americans here first and foremost. But when someone enacts an egregious threat such as this person did, that information becomes more relevant based on context and timing. And it didn't say anything about where he might be from or his origin or anything like that. But the one thing I did do, and this is something that anyone could do if they want to, this is just me sharing information for everybody's knowledge. The website called namsword.app lets you type in a name and gives you the best guess scenario for where that person's name was from, in the sense of country of origin related to that naming scheme. And according to this website, at least, I don't know this for a fact, but according to this website, most likely country of origin was Iran. And then the second most likely was Afghanistan. Either way, I just wanted to, because, context matters. And the fact that it wasn't reported on at all, especially in this modern day of media, does give me a reason to look that information up, right? There's reasons why they leave certain things out at times. I think we're all aware of that. So, what else is happening? Very similar in vein. Well, we did have that situation in that Colorado amusement park. Now, I want to just touch base on a couple things there, because it's not about the exact situation itself. It's kind of like, it's about the profile of the potential shooter. And it lets you look at this through that vein that we discussed in the beginning of this conversation. And if you just joined us, we talked about how there are threats throughout the dark web right now to basically hire disgruntled employees or disgruntled people who are fueled by the desire for money or revenge to enact crimes. And we also talked about how the FBI said Iran has tried to eliminate U.S. officials here on American soil, and how they're willing to hire criminals to do so. So when you start looking at things through that lens, now we look at this situation and we say, okay, there were some weird red flags here, but there's also some other things that I want to touch base on. Brother says heavily armed man found dead at Colorado amusement park wouldn't talk to any of us. In an interview with NBC News on Tuesday, and this is from October 31st, once again, David Barajas Medina said he and his younger brother, Diego Barajas Medina, slept in the same room and rarely spoke to each other. Okay. The man whose body was found in a Colorado amusement park with a semi-automatic rifle nearby and a handgun at his side was described by his older brother Tuesday as a recluse who stayed up every night playing video games. Just so you're aware, I didn't write this, but in my opinion, that sentence made it sound like his older brother's name was Tuesday. Hey, I don't work for mainstream media, but maybe they need people who can write better. That's just my opinion. Anyway, Diego Barajas Medina, 20, whom the Garfield County Coroner's Office identified as the man whose body was found in a woman's restroom before Glenwood Caverns Adventure Park opened Saturday. Geez, these sentences are long. Was a quiet person, his brother David Barajas Medina, 27, said in an exclusive interview. Now, Diego, the younger brother who was the potential shooter, was only 20 years old, okay? The brothers lived with their mother in a 2-bedroom apartment in Carbondale, about 14 miles south of the amusement park. David and Diego shared a room. Okay. He always wanted to be a police officer, so he had guns, David said. He had a vest. Under Diego's bed was a box that David said may have stored the firearms authorities found. Weapons, the local sheriff said, are most likely illegal and unregistered and untraceable ghost guns that can be made at home with kits and 3D printers. We all know that narrative. David said he was at a loss for what was going on in his brother's mind. I didn't think he was a dangerous person, he said. Man had no connection to the park. Authorities were trying to assess why Diego would go to the park before business hours carrying a rifle described as looking like an AR-15, a handgun, believed to have been used to end his life, and explosives. He wore dark clothing in the style of police tactical officers, authorities said. He was highly prepared and highly weaponized, but chose ultimately to remove himself from the equation. Garfield County Sheriff Lou Villario said Monday at a news conference. Okay, so this was a strange situation. And then I do want to mention Villario, which is how I assume it might be pronounced if you're saying it from the tone of being Spanish or Hispanic. Villario said the writing stated, "I am not a killer. I just wanted to get into the caves." Okay, so what happened? Everyone's kind of speculated on this for a little bit. Look at this through the vein of 5th-generation warfare. Look at it through the vein of foreign entities trying to hire or incentivize people to commit atrocities. Look at it through the vein of somebody who really didn't seem like a dangerous person to their immediate family, who shared a room with this person, who had aspirations to be a police officer. And then ask yourself what could have created a scenario where this person would have felt the need to act in the manner that they did. And if you think of it from the vein of the possibility of this entanglement between being hired by a foreign entity or possibly blackmailed by a foreign entity, you realize that there may have been threats on the table, or there may have been incentives on the table that this person was supposed to act in a certain way in order to possibly protect somebody they cared about, possibly pay off a debt for somebody. And understand right this second, I'm just going to tell you this straightforward. Iran and Hezbollah are directly tied in with the Mexican drug cartels. And the Mexican drug cartels can easily call in favors for those who owe them a debt. And the debts that they owe are not easily paid for, generally requiring either large sums of money or something much more egregious. And I highly doubt that these gentlemen that lived together in that bedroom at 20 and 27 years old with their mother had the financial means to pay off a cartel-sized debt. Okay, so do I know this for a fact? No. But when I start to look at these events through the vein and the lens of the current scenario we're dealing with, you understand that you can actually start to build a perspective that shows you kind of what we're dealing with, right? And that person just may have decided last minute that they could not and would not go through with what they were told to do. Okay. Porky Prepper, you joined? I appreciate it. Listen, I appreciate channel members always. And tonight I do have my members only chat right after this live stream at 9:45 Central Standard Time. I also have the Subscribe Star members invited to that as well. And I do have my Subscribe Star monthly preparedness incentive from October being, awarded to the recipient tonight, which I'll talk about later in the stream. So if you're a channel member or a Subscribe Star member, there is a link in the community tab for the live stream after this one, okay? And that's just a more casual format where we just chat. Now, let's move on from there, okay? Because a lot of that was speculation, but I want you to understand that speculation is a tool you should be using at this point in time. Why? Because when you put out by the mainstream, you have to speculate in order to read between the lines. That's just kind of part of your job. Hoping for the best but preparing for the worst means speculating that the worst is a possibility. So I understand when people get worked up about, hey, there's too much speculation going on here. Well, if you're not speculating, then you're just digesting what's being fed to you, correct? I mean, that's kind of where we're at this point in time. You can't fight fifth generation warfare with direct honesty. That's not how it works. But I think that we understand what's happening in our world, and you need to be prepared for it to get worse. Illegal alien arrested in Houston, wanted to build bombs, threatened Jews. This is from November 1st. This is from a local radio station in Houston, but sometimes I like to use local media because they don't sugarcoat things as often, and they don't usually have as strong of an agenda or a narrative. So I find that the information can be a little bit more straightforward, which I appreciate, right? Here's the thing. This is the thumbnail I chose for tonight's broadcast, and the reason for that was because this person, and we're going to get into it a little bit further here, but this person was specifically training at gun ranges and trying to figure out how to make explosive devices to attack certain groups of people. Now, the other thing I want to keep in mind when considering this is the fact that this person's willing to go to the range and get training in order to be as proficient as possible when it comes to acting in the manner that they're trying to act in. What are you doing in the same regard? Are you training? Are you actually getting to the range? Are you learning how to defend yourself? Do you even have a firearm, or do you have basic firearm knowledge? Like, these are all things you should be considering at this point in time, because these people aren't going to wait for you to learn how to defend yourself or learn how to properly manipulate a weapon system. Like, they're doing it now. They're training. So not only are we kind of past the point of just carrying, a pocket gun and hoping for a belly shot on an armed, mugger, like that's, I don't need to worry about that because I'll just pop him 3 times in the belly. That is old news right now. Like, when I say you need to change your mindset for one of being in SHTF right now, it means that this person is at the range training with modern firearms and rifle systems, and your pocket gun is not going to be proficient enough against what this person is trying to accomplish, right? So just keep those things in mind. Look, you got to do what's best for you, but this is how I'm approaching the situation, okay? FBI Director Christopher Wray told senators today that an illegal alien arrested last week in Houston threatened Jews and wanted to learn how to build bombs, okay? So Haib Abuyash was arrested last week. At the time, it was on a gun charge, and the FBI said he was in contact with others. Read that line again. He was in contact with others who had a radical mindset. It was much worse than that. Okay. Wray told the Senate Homeland Security Committee that Abuyash was studying how to build bombs and posted online about his support for killing Jews. We're learning even more about Abuyash. He was arrested Thursday after the FBI reviewed videos on his social media, including an August 11th, 2023 recording that apparently showed him firing a rifle and semi-automatic pistols at a range in Houston. According to legal documents, Abiyash, a Jordanian citizen, came to the U.S. in 2019 after applying for a tourist visa in Jerusalem and indicating he was a Palestinian citizen. Ray is concerned there are others like Abiyash out there. Here in the United States, our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals, or small groups will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives, he told senators. That includes not just homegrown violent extremists inspired by a foreign terrorist organization, but also domestic violent extremists targeting Jewish or Muslim communities. Okay, so look, we all know the FBI is not our best friend. We all know that they are not the most honest group at this point in time, but we also know that these situations do exist, and they're telling us right here that this person was in contact with others who had the same radical ideology, and that their biggest concern right now is individuals or small groups who have the same ideologies and are willing to act on their extreme beliefs. This guy has a SIG Spear in his hand, right? I mean, that's a $4,000 rifle, and I believe that's a Tango 6T on top of it. That's a minimum, a $1,600 optic, but the one he's got there is probably more than that. So all I'm trying to say, and unless that's an MSR, but anyway, all I'm trying to say is like that's some serious hardware. This isn't, a side-by-side 12 gauge, right? Okay, listen, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page when it comes to like where your readiness level needs to be. Those three events we just discussed obviously can come through all of those chains of incentivization of, the disgruntled. Now, a couple things I want to mention before I talk about another similar situation, another arrest here on U.S. soil of someone in a similar fashion, let's just say. Okay, here's the thing. First off, these people aren't going to walk into whatever establishment they choose as a target or whatever section of our infrastructure they decide to target. They're not going to walk in and go, hey, you over there, are you Jewish? Oh, you aren't? Okay, I'll just move on to the next person. No matter how you feel about their cause or their how you feel about anything happening in the rest of the world or anything related to that, they're not going to just let you live because you happen to not fit their target demographic when they enact their plan, right? Like doesn't matter if you're collateral damage or if you're the intended target, you still didn't have a good time, right? So please keep that in mind as these things keep occurring. The same people who might target one group because of their religious beliefs or origin could target the opposite group, and you might still be in the crossfire regardless, okay? So understand that that's very much where we're at right now. The other thing I want to mention, and this is just something that I have my level of concern with, of course, because I'm very distrusting, of certain elements of the federal government. But if you were to say, I don't know, have people like this continually showing up at gun ranges and buying weapons and ammunition and constantly finding themselves plotting attacks via the training they're receiving in the civilian sector, what kind of clampdown would you expect from the federal government for our safety regarding that, right? How easy it would be to convince the general population that access to these ranges or these stores or that level of training is in fact one of the problems that we have to mitigate. And how far off or how off kilter, I guess you would say, would it be for the federal government to put a pause on, I don't know, certain levels of training, maybe the sale of certain products or items related to said training. And then obviously it's unconstitutional and has to go through the court system and gets struck down. But how long does that take? Right? So just keep in mind that anything like this that's happening will always be used against you to some level. And my anticipation here is that we might see some of that occur in the future, where it's no longer about restricting gun owners or, getting guns off the streets. It's, hey, we're under attack from these groups. They're coming into our stores and buying ammo and buying weapons, and then they're getting training at these locations. And we got to stop them from being able to do that, because otherwise it's just going to get worse. And, this is like war, like we're in a war. So just for war, like we have to stop that. Like we're putting a pause on it until we can get out of this war. Right. You understand what I'm saying when it comes to that. So just keep that in mind moving forward, that it's very possible that these events are used to their advantage, of course, right, in order to clamp down on things that we like to participate in. Let's see here. Callie Prepper, good to see you. Vincent Boogaloo is here as well. Talking about wind-up toys, very interesting. And if you're not aware of what that relates to, make sure you look it up, because that's what a lot of what we're talking about tonight could also be considered. All right. So we also had this happen. It's just I tried to give you more examples, right? I'm not just like, look at this one. This is from November 3rd. Okay, so this is from Friday. ICE arrests possible terrorist in New York who entered U.S. via southern border. This just demonstrates once again, first off, why the southern border thing is such an issue. And second off, that they're not just in Texas, they're not just in Arizona. Like they're already dispersed. They're already where they need to be. They're already planted, right? So I really do not take your proximity or lack thereof to the southern border as a threat level indicator. This can happen anywhere. It's not just, so far contained to the southern border states. Like this is going nationwide. Okay. New York City. Federal immigration authorities have announced the arrest of an illegal immigrant wanted internationally for alleged ties to terrorist organizations. The 29-year-old man was released into the U.S. just 2 weeks prior after encountering agents at the southern border before his arrest in New York City. So he encountered agents at the southern border and then was released, and then he was arrested in New York City. That seems extremely efficient. He is wanted in Senegal for offenses including destruction, degradation, and damages in relation to a terrorist organization. In a press release, Immigration and Customs Enforcement said the individual will now remain in custody without bond. Non-citizens who are engaged in or suspected of supporting terrorism are a direct threat to our country's national security and will be expeditiously removed from the United States, ERO New York City Field Office Director Kenneth Gianalo said. Gianalo, whatever. ERO New York City will use every tool at our disposal to keep American citizens and residents safe from those who erroneously believe they can exploit our immigration laws to escape justice in other countries. Now, first off, this alludes to the idea that they're going to just deport this person, right? And does that actually stop them from coming back? We know the answer to that question, but that's what they're alluding to. The arrest follows fears by U.S. officials that terrorists and other dangerous individuals could be entering the U.S. through its southern border with Mexico. I can't believe it. In a memo to employees, the San Diego U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Office attributed the increased risk of such crossings to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. FBI Director Christopher Wray this week warned the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee that Hamas's October 7th attack could inspire new threats to Americans. Several foreign nations are now trying to get into the good graces of President Joe Biden by restricting migrants from entering the U.S. through Latin America. Haiti, El Salvador, and Mexico are among the countries implementing the restrictions in hopes of increasing chances of receiving aid, sanction bargaining, and general goodwill from the U.S. Interestingly enough, now hold on, I know what you're thinking, but in case you weren't aware, Haiti, El Salvador, and Mexico are some of the most corrupt countries in the entire Western Hemisphere. So good for them for trying their hardest. But we all know that they are completely and utterly in cahoots with the cartels. So great. So glad they've got our back. It makes me feel much more comfortable. Okay. So that was another example of a person with terrorist ties who not only entered the country illegally through the southern border, which we're all concerned about, but was also able to make their way all the way to New York before arriving or being arrested in New York City. And even then, they're going to just deport him, right? To be detained at whatever country wants him, right? We all know that that's just going to be a pause. Like we're just delaying the inevitable, right? That's where we're at. That's why I'm trying to demonstrate why this threat is actually a big issue. Okay. This is a big deal. We are in a situation at this point in time where our lives are not as secure as they used to be. And because of that, we have to do our due diligence because it's not on anyone else but ourselves, right? And I mean, right now, if you all wanted, at least some like direction, I guess, when it came to, where your preparedness focuses should be, that's going to be understanding, your community, what the response would be to an attack or something of that nature, your response times, how long would it take for an actual quick response force or even a SWAT team to arrive in your area. For example, for me, there's not even a localized SWAT team in general. The closest one would still take probably at least an hour to arrive, and then I mean that to my town, like not to my house, but like to my town. And then my quick response force is just police who have additional training. I mean, so they're still showing up one at a time in separate cars. So these are things that you should be aware of right now. I think first aid should be top of mind. You should have some level of first aid on your person, even if that just means at the bare minimum, like a tourniquet or a pressure bandage. Have something available to you. It might not be for you. It could be for someone else that you can hopefully save their life, right? So keep that in mind. And then obviously, I think right now, square away a good general purpose fighting rifle. You're not going to have it with you in most circumstances. I understand that, but you might need it, and it might be something that comes in handy and becomes more and more important as things progress. And when I say square away, I mean make sure that it's of a certain level of quality and that the components and accessories you choose can actually perform at a certain level as well. The cheapest option is not what you should be gambling your life with. And that's just my opinion. So I do also so here's the thing. We're going to now discuss other threats here on U.S. soil that are coming from the cyber attack realm. And I have examples of cyber recently occurred here in the U.S. that are going to disrupt some things, especially related to logistics. And it just goes to show you how these things are moving forward, right? So that's problematic in itself. And hold on, we're having some internet connectivity issues. Give me a second here. I look like a strange robot that can't figure out where my pants are. So let's go ahead and talk about some cyber attacks here. But really quick, I also want to mention that Genesis Gold Group is a huge supporter of the channel as well. And if you go to magicpreppergold.com, they can help you out when it comes to stabilizing some of your wealth, whether or not that's through rolling your IRA over into a gold-backed IRA or something along those lines. But one thing you should understand about, Genesis Gold Group is that when you supplement your assets with their precious metals programs through gold and silver, it's actual physical gold and silver that's stored in a depository. It's not like just certificates or ones and zeros in some sort of digital account. Like it's legitimate precious metals in a depository that you can literally go get and pull out physically if need be. So like these things are available to you, and magicpreppergold.com helps to support the channel. And obviously, if you want to get some gold and silver, it helps me out. I can get more brass and lead, which is getting more and more expensive. So I appreciate it. And just so you're aware, one more thing to kind of keep in mind when it comes to precious metals and things of that nature, the things where it's like, get $5,000 in free silver when you sign up, right? Nothing is free. Literally nothing is free. So please keep that in mind when you're being offered things of that nature, because that cost is going to be rolled over into some other section of the contract, right? We all know that it's going to go into the fees, or it's just going to raise the overall total cost of the metals that are being stored away. So just keep that in mind, because Genesis Gold Group just doesn't do that stuff. So, and I know people have asked me, at least, on a personal level, like, well, what about these ones that offer me extra money? It's just, there's no such thing as free. I don't know how else to say it. So just be aware of that. Okay. So I'll put a link in the description as well as in the pinned comment for that too, if anybody's interested. It does help a lot. Let's talk about cyber attacks that are going on right now. Okay. They are concerned, as they should be, because things are getting weird. Okay. Let's see. And I just want to say hi to you guys real quick. We got Colorado Gray Wolf here. Good to see you. Very happy. I've got Bale Shar as well. Durgan is here. I appreciate you. Liberty Off-Road, you got a D in undergrad econ, but you know what? I still like you. So honestly, it sounds like you're still probably more capable of running our economy than those who are doing it right now. So congratulations. You got promoted. All right. U.S. officials hold their breath for Iranian cyber attacks. Critical infrastructure owners and operators are stepping up security as the U.S. government keeps a close eye on evolving threats from Tehran in cyberspace. Okay? The U.S. government is prepping for a potential onslaught of Iranian cyber attacks in retaliation for support for Israel in its conflict with Hamas. This is from November 1st. Okay? Now, I also I think it's interesting that my internet's being all wacky right now, but I just want everyone to know that there is indeed a level of cyber attacks that's occurring, but we're just not told about all of them that happen. In fact, most of them are kind of hidden from the public unless they're so egregious that they have to be revealed, right? And the reason for that is to not lose public confidence, right? Why would a company want to tell you, hey, you know that business you do with us? Well, it's compromised. Sorry, but we'll do our best to fix it. No one wants to have to admit that. So just keep that in mind because there's always more going on in that realm than what's being revealed. It's far from just Israel at risk of cyber attacks from the Hamas-aligned regime's cyber operatives, U.S. officials say. They also see the U.S. and other nations that support the Israeli government as likely targets. Such attacks could take the form of attempting to damage critical systems like water or electricity, would likely involve widespread disinformation efforts, and could also involve proxies to keep Iran's fingerprints off the incidents. Oh, proxies? I can't believe people would use those at this point in time. It's almost like some of those people that are supporting Ukraine might be considered proxies. I'm not sure. The cyber targeting of American interests and critical infrastructure that we already see conducted by Iran and non-state actors alike, we can expect to get worse if the conflict expands, as will the threat of kinetic attacks. FBI Director Christopher Wray testified to the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee on Tuesday. So they are very concerned that Iranian cyber attacks are imminent. And I think that's a reasonable assumption based on how modern warfare works and where they can do the most damage without having to step foot on our soil physically. But it's still affecting us here directly, which is why it matters and why you should pay attention to it, okay? Hey, Loretta, good to see you. Glad you're here. Because everyone else is saying hi, and I want to say hi now too. So I'm glad you're here, Loretta Hutch. You're amazing. Okay, so what cyber attacks are occurring? Well, here's one that's problematic to a degree. You know that company that's like really big into weapons programs? Oh yeah, Boeing. They have nothing to do with military logistics at all, right? Boeing. This is from November 2nd. Boeing says cyber incident hit parts business after ransom threat. Interesting that they would be targeted. It's not like their products have created any type of, I don't know, devastation in some of these foreign parts of the world, right? I don't know why this was so zoomed out. Let's zoom in so everyone can actually read a little bit at least, right? Boeing, Washington. Boeing, one of the world's largest defense and space contractors, said on Wednesday it was investigating a cyber incident that impacted elements of its parts and distribution business and cooperating with a law enforcement probe into it. Boeing acknowledged the incident days after the Lockbit cybercrime gang said on Friday it had stolen a tremendous amount of sensitive data from the U.S. plane maker that it would dump online if Boeing didn't pay ransom by November 2nd. The Lockbit threat was no longer on the gang's website as of Wednesday, and it didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Boeing declined to comment on whether Lockbit was behind the cyber incident it disclosed. This issue does not affect flight safety, a Boeing spokesperson said. We are actively investigating the incident and coordinating with law enforcement and regulatory authorities. We are notifying our customers and suppliers. I wonder, I'm just going to throw this out there, I wonder if Lockbit may have been one of the proxies that we had just previously discussed. Boeing's parts and distribution business, which falls under its Global Services division, provides material and logistics support to its customers, according to the company's 2022 annual report. Some web pages on the company's official website had that information on the Global Services division were down on Wednesday, with a message that cited technical issues. We expect the site to be back up soon. Okay, so Boeing was hit. They're a defense contractor. That was most likely personal on a certain level. Let's be honest, okay? Who else has been hit? Well, this one was actually brought to me by a very close friend of mine, and I didn't realize this was happening, but he let me know. And if you're listening, you are an amazing person, which he very much is. So, Ace Hardware. This actually matters for more than you might think, okay? And I'm going to explain this in just a second. But Ace Hardware struggles to restore systems after malicious cyber attack, okay? We are currently unable to process orders online. Need it now? Visit your local Ace store, a banner splashed across the company's customer-facing website reads. Describing the attack as a fast-moving, dynamic situation with details changing rapidly. Ace CEO and President John Verheusen sent an email to its more than 5,800 retailers on Monday to explain the system-wide outage. On Sunday morning, we detected a cybersecurity incident that is impacting the majority of our IT systems, the email states. As a result of this incident, many of our key operating systems, including AceNet, our warehouse management systems, the Ace Retailer Mobile Assistant, Hot Sheets, Invoices, Ace Rewards, and the Care Center's phone system has been interrupted or suspended. Nothing is more important than restoring all operations as soon as humanly possible, said Verheusen, who labeled the circumstances a battle of good versus evil. The Illinois headquartered company explained that 1,202 devices, including 196 servers, were hit during the attack and needed to undergo restoration. The attack caused all systems to be suspended, including those used to receive customer orders, as well as all customer shipments, which were canceled for October 30th and 31st. Scheduled deliveries are adversely impacted, and retailers are requested to refrain from placing additional orders for now, as these cannot be processed, the note said. The company urged stores to stay open for its customers as point-of-sale systems, credit card processing, and Ace Hardware bank card programs were not impacted by the attack in an update to retailers that day. Your Ace team, along with the support of a group of technical forensic experts, is working feverishly to resolve this situation, the CEO said in an email. Okay, that's pretty crazy, right? I mean, that's a pretty substantial attack to basically shut down a huge retailer here in the United States. Why does this matter? Well, here's the thing. Well, first off, it's an example of a cyber attack. We don't know who did it, but we know it's directly after all this stuff just happened and right after the FBI has been telling everybody that this is an imminent threat that we're all facing. But in case you aren't aware, maybe you live in an urban environment and you're not as aware of this, but Ace Hardware, at least in my experience, tell me if I'm wrong, is one of the only hardware stores you're going to find in a rural environment. Every small town I've ever lived in had an Ace Hardware, right? It just did. At somewhere you could get to an Ace Hardware. And you know what Ace Hardware also had in a lot of these small towns? It had all the hardware stuff you needed, but it had a lot of other things too that you just couldn't find in the small town otherwise. When I say that, what I mean is firearms and ammunition and other things that you wouldn't generally find at an Ace that might be in the middle of a major city, you could find at your rural Ace because a lot of them are franchises and they're bought by small business owners who want to provide their community with access to all the things that come along with an Ace Hardware. So this is actually a very critical retail chain for rural America. And what's interesting is that this affects small towns more so adversely than large cities. And this is an example where a cyber attack not only basically took down an entire retailer that's a very big name in the country, but adversely affected small towns more than major cities, which should be a reminder that even if you live in a rural environment, you can be touched by these types of attacks. It doesn't always happen directly to a major city. Sometimes you get affected more because you live somewhere further away. So I wanted to bring that up because like my local Ace Hardware, they have guns and ammo. You know what else they have? Like everything else I might need to keep my house up and running throughout the winter, whether or not that's heating elements, whether or not that's just whatever, right? It's the only place in my town that I can go get 2x4s or hardware. It just is what it is. So keep that in mind because this company's probably more important than you might think if you don't live in a rural environment. It's very much like Dollar General, except for we like Ace Hardware, but Dollar General, you know, every small town has one, right? So keep that in mind. But I just found that to be interesting that a company that size was affected to that degree. This should just show you how these cyber attacks could look moving forward into the future. We're in a very strange part of the timeline right now, and everything should be viewed from the perspective that we're talking about tonight. Act as SHTF is now, right? That's what I literally wrote on the title of the video. And the reason for that was because if you're acting like it, then you'll see things through a lens that makes sense for why it's happening, rather than always just looking at everything as an individual isolated event. Oh, this one thing happened, move on. This thing happened over here, move on. Oh, another crazy thing, move on. They're not isolated. It's all part of the equation now. And I mean, I had a great conversation with a very good friend of mine that we were doing some training out on the range the other day, and it was very interesting because he basically told me, I thought you were kind of like hyperbolic and crazy when you're talking about how we're like basically in a war anyway right now, and that's how we should be acting. But according to him, throughout his daily life now, he's been seeing things and having strange encounters and having more information fed to him to the point where he's like, you know what, I think you might be right actually. And I was like, wow, I was like, I guess I'm getting through. So hopefully, I'm not trying to scare anybody. That's not the goal here. That should never be the goal. But I'm not going to lie to you all either, or I'm not going to just try to sugarcoat things either. What's the purpose of that? It doesn't help anything. And the worst thing that could happen from us preparing for these things is that we're better prepared now and nothing happens. Oh no, I guess all that preparation didn't pay off. We hope it doesn't pay off. I hope all my preps are completely worthless for the entirety of my life. That would be ideal. That's just 100% what I would hope for. But you know what? The one time I need them, I'm going to be like, well, glad I had that. And you know what? We've had power outages before where I relied on some of my solar units, and guess what? It didn't really affect us. So it is what it is, right? We do the best we can. Let's see here. So Don't Tread on Rick says, yeah, like lead and fire starters are being able to make the thing you can trade. Yeah, I like that. And I think that's where I was going with my salt video I just put out, right? Like salt is a very good barter item because it's likely not going to be used against you, but everyone will need it. And it's not so expensive that trading it away will feel bad. But you know what? The people who need it will be very glad to have it, which means you'll probably, I can't guarantee this, but you'll probably be making out on the better side of the deal when it comes to how much things cost before everyone needs salt, right? So just keep that in mind. Ian, hey, what's up to you too? Glad you're here. We appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much. So we also have, there's more. I know we're still going. It's crazy. Check this out. Maybe you heard about this, maybe you didn't. A driver rammed through security fence at South Carolina nuclear plant, authorities say. Is this connected? I can't verify it, but what's going on? How frequently are these things all happening in such a short time period, right? The same vehicle and driver also allegedly showed up on the property of the nuclear station an hour before the incident occurred, but drove off after being asked to leave. So they were told to leave, they left, and then they came back and just drove right through the gate. Now, look, there are cases where instability, especially mental instability, could create a situation that something like this occurs, right? We know that. So, of course, not every single thing is going to be, this guy is involved with something, right? But I do want you to always consider that could be the case or is the case, because at least in that scenario, you're thinking about it from a strategic standpoint, which then allows you to better estimate your threat level, right? And the other thing that I think everyone should remember is that even if somebody doesn't match a profile of sorts, anyone, especially thanks to the internet, can be very well blackmailed, right? And so we don't know the circumstances behind some of these people's behaviors or egregious acts. For all we know, they're literally being held hostage in some way, shape, or form, right? We know how ransoms work. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the cartels have employed these tactics for decades, right? They take your family and they say, okay, if you don't do this thing, we get rid of your family. Right? How many people are going to just let their family be eliminated if the thing they're supposed to do doesn't seem as bad to them, right? So always keep all this in mind. We're never going to get the full story because generally it just doesn't work that way. But there's more to it almost always at this point in time. Things are very much less random now than they used to be. Authorities are searching for a man who drove through the gate of a nuclear power plant in Oconee County, South Carolina, and allegedly attempted to hit security officers at the facility on Thursday evening. I need to verify whether or not he's been caught already or not. But here's what happened. The nuclear station, owned and operated by Duke Energy, is located on Lake Kiwi and has 3 nuclear reactors. It is protected 24/7 by armed security guards, access controls, intrusion detection, and monitoring equipment. The plant is operating safely and no one was injured, according to authorities. A vehicle entered an administrative gate, but was not able to access the plant due to our multiple layers of security, said Duke Energy spokesperson Michaela Kreuzberger. Advanced surveillance equipment and physical intrusion barriers consisting of concrete structures and razor wires surround the site. Security at the plant activated when the vehicle struck the pop-up barricades at the facility. The driver put the vehicle in reverse and was proceeded down a dirt road where Duke Energy security blocked the vehicle in, the sheriff's office said. The suspect drove through a fence after allegedly attempting to hit security officers and a security truck with a guard in it, then exited the plant back onto the nearby highway. After driving back onto the highway 183, the driver then drove into Pickens County and pulled onto some property on Jones Mill Road where shots were fired, according to a statement by the Oconee County Sheriff's Office. At this time, the source of the shots fired in the Jones Mill Road area is unknown. Now, that's questionable in many ways. Could it have been he drove on the wrong person's property? Quite likely. Could it also have been similar to how, I don't know, some people end up with 2 gunshot wounds that only get reported as having 1? I'm not sure. So, hopefully you know what I was referencing there. Authorities said they are in the early stages of the investigation. They're looking for a white male suspect driving a silver 2002 Toyota Camry with an Arkansas tag of 380 VDR. Doyle Wayne Weisenhunt, 66 of Locksburg, Arkansas, was named Friday afternoon as a person of interest by Oconee County Sheriff Mike Crenshaw. If you see Mr. Weisenhunt, please call 911 immediately, the sheriff's office said in a statement. Okay. I don't know what happened there, but that's a series of events. Okay. Not only did dude come in, get rejected, came back, tried to ram some people, blew through a security gate, then went onto a property where shots were fired and is now missing. I don't know. Right? So looking at it through the lens of SHTF and everything else that's happening in the world right now, there's probably more to this than what we're being told. And that's just how we have to proceed. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Now, there's one more story I want to get to here real quick, because I think it's important for everyone to just be aware that these gears are still turning. Like the gears of oppression, we'll call it, are still moving forward, because they don't stop, right? They're going to keep going no matter what. But before I do that, I do want to just say that we do have the Subscribe Star and YouTube members chat tonight. It's members only. If you're one of those members on either platform, then you're welcome to join the chat. Should be a good time. If you want to join Subscribe Star, it's $5 a month. You get exclusive content. You get my kind of more hot takes on things that I'm talking about regarding preparedness. And then you also get some other good stuff. So, oops, I just showed everyone the link, but unless you're really fast, I don't think that's going to matter. So if you want to check out Subscribe Star, please do. There's a link in the description, but I will link that in the chat too, just because it's nice for everybody to be able to get a little taste, I guess. But the other thing I want to mention is that tonight I'm going to go ahead and announce that the Preparedness Incentive for October is going to, and not everyone actually makes a real name on Subscribe Star, but it's just part of the deal. It's fine. User number 776F8838 got October's Preparedness Incentive, which is actually a Midway USA Pro Series shooting mat. And Midway USA is offered to help support the Subscribe Star as well. So I really appreciate them for doing that. But this is one of their Pro Series shooting mats. It's really nice. Roll it out, shoot from the prone, feel good about yourself. And you know what? I'm just going to throw this out there for everybody. Yeah, you can get down in the dirt and everything if you want, and you want to get your gear all dirty and messed up and stuff. That's fine. I get that. We're testing our limits. We're pushing it, right? But at the same time, you don't have to do that. Like, don't make people feel. Don't let anyone else make you feel like you have to literally lay down stomach first in the mud just to prove a point. If you have a shooting mat and you can take it with you, just use it. It's not a big deal. Okay, trust me, as a guy who gets plenty of flack for using a shooting mat, which I just. There's a little bit of a problem here in our community if we're making fun of people for using a shooting mat, right? Oh no, this guy's actually out shooting. What a loser. I can't believe he's using a shooting mat. Whereas the guy saying that to me has literally been to the range once in the last 2 years. But whatever, what do I know, right? So, one last story before we have to call it quits tonight, okay? And I appreciate all of you. I really do. You're amazing. And username or user number 776F8838. I'll post that in the Subscribe Star too, in case you're not here in the chat. But I do want to just say thanks for supporting the channel through that venue. Okay, y'all hear about this? Because this was brought to my attention tonight. Thank you from a good friend of mine named Chappie, who is an awesome dude. Chappie, always helping me out because he has great advice. Okay. The CDC expands testing of international air traveler samples to include flu, RSV, and other respiratory viruses. They're expanding their testing program. Is this a big concern? I'm not sure, but I do think that it shows they're going to continually grow this monster that was created, I don't know, about 3 years ago or so. The CDC is conducting a new pilot on samples it is collecting as part of its traveler based genomic surveillance program that will provide early detection of flu, RSV, and other select respiratory viruses, in addition to SARS CoV 2. The pilot, which will last for several months, will be implemented by Ginkgo Bioworks and XpressCheck. Samples that test positive for these viruses will be sequenced and uploaded to public databases to provide valuable information to public health officials and policymakers. The expansion of the traveler-based genomics surveillance program to flu, RSV, and other pathogens is essential as we head into fall respiratory season. The TGS program, which began during the COVID-19 pandemic, acted as an early warning system to detect new and rare variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and will do the same for other respiratory viruses going forward, said Dr. Cindy Friedman, chief of CDC's Travelers Health Branch. TGS is a multimodal platform that consists of 3 complementary approaches, including voluntary nasal sampling of arriving international travelers, aircraft testing, and wastewater sampling at 7 airports nationwide. TGS has proven to be a nimble and scalable resource for public health officials in the United States, quickly adapting to a changing pandemic in real time and addressing gaps in global surveillance, especially when testing and sequencing information are limited. For example, TGS provided early detection of the SARS-CoV-2 variant BA2.86 entering the United States within days of its global identification. As the infected traveler had originated travel in Japan, this finding also informed the public health community that the new variant had also spread to Asia. As of September 2023, TGS has enrolled more than 360,000 air travelers. Participation in the program is voluntary and anonymous. The program covers flights from more than 135 countries from all World Health Organization regions. Still going, still doing more, still expanding. Just thought you should know about that because that's what we're doing now. So, I don't know about you, but I'm not signing up to get no swab up my nose voluntarily. That's not my thing. That's just, I'm not into that. So, listen, I hope all of you are very prepared for what's coming our way. If the war is already hot, a lot of the events we're witnessing are kinetic actions of said war. And if you look at them through the vein of a war, you can see how these enemy combatants are enacting their plans here on U.S. soil. But if you want to look through it or look at it through the lens of the mainstream media or the naysayers, which you can also put out there, then they'll have you believe it's isolated incidents of crime or isolated incidents of mentally unstable people or isolated incidents of people related to organizations that are egregiously awful. But I just don't think that's where we're at anymore. And that's kind of the key to 5th generation warfare in many ways, right? Never actually be forward about your movements. And let's be honest, it's very much in the same vein of that saying about the devil, right? And whether you're religious or not, this is just one of those sayings that kind of applies to a lot of these different situations. But the whole saying of the greatest feat the devil ever pulled off was making everyone believe he didn't exist, right? Which is not like a biblical quote, it's just a saying that's out there, right? But that whole concept is very similar to what we're witnessing right now. The best thing for some of these countries to do is to make it seem like there's no connection. Because you know what that creates? More chaos, more spontaneity, and less awareness. The less aware we are, and the less vigilant the American people are, the more likely these crimes, acts of war, right, are going to be successful. So, raise your situational awareness, raise your preparedness level, and when you see things that don't look right, actually look at them. And if you have to file it away in some kind of a threat binder or whatever else it is you might have, then do so. Because it's not going to hurt anything to create a dial or a database of possible threats within your area. But if those threats become active, that database can become very useful. So hopefully this was a good conversation for all of you. I really appreciate every single one of you being here. If you want to hit the thumbs up button, that helps me out too, just because I know the algo appreciate. Okay. But I will see subscribe star members and YouTube channel members here in about, I don't know, where are we at? Like 5 minutes. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.